The Nova Guest List Podcast.
With Kieran McGuinness.
The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music from the seriously addictive Radio Nova.
Yeah, that is the gorgeous On Citric Road from Ye Vagabonds, and their fourth album, All Tied Together, came out a week or two ago, and it's a gorgeous listen. I suppose they're on this journey of like a mix of Irish folk and modern music, and kind of there's an American feel to it as well. And yeah, this is the latest album in it. It was recorded in a house in Galway. I think a lot of it was recorded live, and we're going to chat about that because we have Brian from the band on the phone. How's it going, Brian?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. You must be delighted to have the new album out.
It's a relief to have it out there, you know. We've been sitting on it for a while and kind of excited by it. It was such an amazing process, and like there was such energy in the process of making it that, yeah, definitely it feels good to just release that now out into the world. Now it's everybody else's.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, how was the process for this one different? I mean, 4 albums in, you know, you do kind of have a way of working. So what was different about this one?
You know, we've kind of changed it up. I suppose with all of the albums, we've always tried new approaches, and with this one, we wanted to do it as collaboratively as possible. So myself and Jeremy wrote all the songs. I guess one of the main differences from the get-go is that it's all songs that we've written. You know, we worked pretty hard at that for like about a year, just writing a lot and then kind of whittling it down to an album of songs that seemed to make sense together. But then the actual recording process, you know, with other albums and the way that most people would do things, you know, you go in and do the core takes in a couple of days, and then maybe you get the bassist in for a day and you get doing all of our bits separately to each other. That's kind of the typical way that people work, you know, but we have always really thrived in like a live setting. That's always been what we've known the best. You know, we grew up busking and playing with lots of people, like playing in sessions in Dublin and in that kind of communal feeling. So we wanted to try and capture that as much as possible, to try and capture the actual spark of and the excitement of playing with a group of people together. So we brought on board this producer. His name's Philip Weinrobe. He is from the States. He was based in Brooklyn for a long time. And a good friend of his, Shazad Ismaili, who's this wizard wildcard musician. And Phil is just an expert at capturing live, really. That kind of live capture in an atmospheric setting. And also just super involved in the music. He gets really stuck in. So we did it all together. All of the songs were recorded live in a small room. There were hardly any overdubs. I think there were like 3 tiny overdubs that could have been done live anyway, to be honest. But everything was just a single capture, and it was super exciting. And I'm really glad that we did it that way, to be honest. It's still exciting to listen to some of those songs now, like in a way that maybe I've never had with other albums that we've made. It still feels like I'm listening back to an exciting moment. Yeah,
well, it's a gorgeous way to record an album. And you know, it's a bit scary as well. I know what it's like when you're playing. You know, there's a gorgeous energy to it. And you mentioned something there. You mentioned playing together and stuff. And this album really feels like there's a lot of community in it, and there's a lot of stepping back and looking at all the kind of connections that you have, even physical connections, you know, emotional connections, gravity, whatever, things that kind of bring everyone together. And was that something you set out to write about? Or was it something that you noticed as the writing process went, that that was in a lot of songs? That feeling was in a lot of songs.
Yeah, we happened upon it, to be honest. You know, as part of the process that we kind of took with this album, it was really, we started off with a method and a process, and then we kind of observed the songs that came out of that process. And the ones that were the most vivid, kind of the ones that really caught us and caught our attention as we were writing, all seem to be kind of centered around the same period of our lives. Like, in a way, I suppose it's an album from our perspective right now, looking back on a time, and some of it is right now too, but it's definitely community is like a big part of that. And community, it's kind of defined our lives. I mean, it does for everybody. Definitely at that time in our lives, shortly after we moved to Dublin, the community that we met back then certainly defined who we are. And now, you know, it shaped us, and it's always defined everything that we've done. We've always cared a lot about community and that's the feeling of community, and the feeling of even just singing with people in a room is something that we love and wanted to kind of bring into the album somehow. So no, I think with any of the songs in the album, we never set out to write any of them, even political angles on songs or anything like that. None of it is deliberate from the get-go. It's just kind of, we tried to remain as genuine to our experience as possible and to our personal experience. And I suppose if you stay true to your personal experience, then everything else that emerges from it is kind of is just true to that time.
Yeah, I totally see that. And it's funny as well because there's this thing as well. Some of the songs, and I'll actually be interested to know if I'm way off here, but a lot of the songs are reflective in a way that it feels like there's a short distance between you as songwriters and storytellers and the subject. And I was wondering whether or not, yeah, I was just wondering whether or not that was something that, you kind of embraced. Because not all the songs, but in some of them, you're kind of sitting back and you're kind of narrating. I know that's a very common thing to do, but it does feel like it's an important thing to this album, is that sort of memory and place and documenting.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great question. Definitely a big part of our writing when we were trying to hone these songs down, because they didn't just pop out as they are now at all. We rewrite constantly. There's some of the songs on the album that I probably wrote 17 or 18 times over, and constantly rewriting them. And really what we were trying to get to was a sense of immediacy and directness. We were trying to write this album from as real a perspective as possible. And part of that for us became embracing the first person as a perspective too. So, and even with some of the songs, that actually ended up only happening immediately before recording them, where we had written the songs with maybe we in them, like Citric Road was, we had it all right from the start up until the moment that we recorded that take. It was a suggestion from Phil, from the producer, to actually just change all of the we's in the songs to I, and to see what happens, just to observe that change. And so that was the kind of process that we were following for the whole time that we were writing, trying to shorten that distance between us as storytellers, narrators, and the subject, as you say, to make it as direct as possible. We want you to, anyone. If I was reading a book or any kind of engaging in any kind of like art like that, I want to feel like I'm experiencing it in the first person, and so that's kind of what we've been trying to do with this album.
Yeah. In every album, and there's always a moment in it, somewhere after after you're in it, and something emotional happens with the song or something, and that it makes you look back on the songs you've done so far and affects the songs you're going to do ahead. Was there anything like that happened in this album?
I understand what you mean. Yes, that did actually happen. Even though we spent over a year writing, just kind of constantly, after we kind of had a busy time touring for a few years and needed really to just take some time at home to be with our families. And it was kind of, it was actually only in the last few weeks, just before we went to record, that we spent some intense time, myself and Jeremy, working on the songs together. And in that kind of final 2 or 3 weeks before we recorded, we did maybe a terrifying thing of like cutting a song completely, and we kind of pulled it apart and turned it on its side, and realized that it could be put back together in a way that made a lot more sense. And there was a few songs that only kind of came together right before we recorded. On Citric Road, even though I had been kind of playing around with that song for about a year, it was only on my way to the studio, in the van full of gear, that I realized what that song was about, and I wrote the 3 verses on the way there. So that definitely did happen. The perspective of the whole definitely affected how it all came together in that final stage. And it's a perspective, I guess, that you can only have once you've really worked and tried to work at making the songs as good as possible and finding what's real, that then you can start to see what they're all about. And so I'm really glad that happened. The Flood used to be a song called The Flowers on the Waste Ground, it had a different chorus, and there was something about that chorus that framed the song in a different way. It just told the story differently, and it wasn't working. So we scrapped that chorus and completely transformed the
Mm.
song, um, through a kind of a jam, that a little noodle that we kind of took note of, and then a chorus from maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, from when we were teenagers, one that Dermot had written years ago, kind of bonded the song together, and it became this different beast altogether. And then the line "The flowers on the waste ground" ended up being part of "On Citric Road." So they all started to reflect each other, and the world that the album kind of is part of became much more real, just in that final little stretch, which was super interesting. It's never happened to us before with an album, to be honest. We usually had more of an idea of concept beforehand, but no, it was exciting, actually, that little final stretch, and I'm glad that we got it.
Well, look, it's a gorgeous album to listen through, all tied together by Ye Vagabonds. It's out now. Brian, thank you so much for chatting to us today.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks a million.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So when we play, this is Danny, one of the songs we chatted about during that chat, by Ye Vagabonds on Radio Nova.
The Nova Guest List Podcast with Kieran McGuinness. The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music from the seriously addictive Radio Nova.